Are you a Bratz girl or a Barbie girl? That is the question.
Once a princess was getting ready for a special night.
Rainbow Princess Barbie, put on your rainbow. You gotta self-express in the way you dress.
Hello doll fans and welcome back to Beauty Inside a Box. I am so excited to share this video with you. I've been working on it off and on for about a year and now I'm finally ready to share it with the world. This is Bratz versus Barbie, or Barbie versus Bratz. I'm going to be talking about the famous rivalry, the biggest rivalry in the doll industry, I would say, between Mattel, the creators of Barbie, and MGA, the creators of Bratz. Anyone who was alive in the 2000s will know what a cultural moment it was when Bratz appeared and knocked Barbie off her pedestal. But you might not know the whole story about the legal struggles and everything that happened behind the scenes. So we're going to discuss it today. First of all, whether you're a Bratz girl or a Barbie girl, if you love dolls as much as I do, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're new here and check me out on Instagram and TikTok. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. I currently have 9 exclusive videos on my Patreon. Supporting me starts from just $3. It would mean a lot. Thank you. Anyway, before we go any further, let me just say that everything I say in this video is alleged, is supposed, is assumed, is apparently, is speculated, is rumors. Okay, you get the idea. My sources have mostly been an article from the New Yorker, Wikipedia, loads of different Bratz and Barbie databases online, but my most important source has been this book here. This is You Don't Own Me by Orly Lobel. It says How Mattel vs MGA Entertainment Exposed Barbie's Dark Side. So if you want more information about Bratz v Barbie, then definitely consider getting this book. But now, let me set the scene. Barbie had been the #1 best-selling doll pretty much continuously since she was released in 1959. At the beginning of the 90s, her annual sales reached nearly $2 billion. Whenever a competitor tried to steal Barbie's crown, Mattel would be quick to retaliate. Either they would flank the market and create a product similar or greater than their competitor, like when they competed with Dawn or Gem and the Holograms. Another tactic was simply to sue their competitor for copyright infringement if their product was encroaching on Barbie's territory, like when they were competing with Cindy or Steffi Love, or with Warlords, a line of action figures that Mattel claimed were similar to He-Man toys. It's actually kind of hypocritical of Mattel, since Barbie was actually a pretty obvious copy of a German doll called Build Lily. The company that made the doll tried to take Mattel to court for infringement of their patent copyright, but they settled out of court. Mattel eventually purchased the rights to Build Lily dolls and all her patents, and then quickly ceased production of the doll. Even though Barbie had quite a controversial beginning, in later decades she became known as the straight-laced, all-American beauty, and she had incredible success across the world. In 2001, Barbie's sales were steadily declining, and Mattel was struggling to capture the interest of the preteen market, when suddenly appeared the Bratz. Bratz. These are actual original Bratz from 2001. Don't they look beautiful? The Bratz were created by MGA Entertainment and CEO Isaac Larian, and they had an edgy, up-to-date appeal which Barbie was sadly lacking. Bratz featured a group of 4 ethnically ambiguous best friends with cartoony proportions, trendy fashions, and bold makeup. Carter Bryant and the creation of the Bratz. When Carter Bryant was hired by Mattel, he had to sign an intellectual property agreement. Apparently it said everything he created during his employment at Mattel belonged to Mattel. Carter Bryant was originally hired by Mattel to design clothes for Barbie in 1995. He originally designed for mainline Barbie, but he began to feel stifled by the restrictions put on him whilst working there. You see, Mattel was resistant to change. In May of 1998, Carter took a 7-month break from Mattel to return to his family home in Missouri to reinvigorate his creative spark. He says that when he was there, he drove past Kickapoo High School and saw a group of fresh, fashionable teenage girls, which sparked the idea for the Bratz. Crazy to think that this random group of girls probably don't even know that they inspired the Bratz. The original designs of the Bratz were named Lupe, Halliday, Jade, and Zoe. They had interests like playing drums, DJing, French, violin, political science, and mac and cheese. Carter wanted them to be edgy, smart, and defiant. Although not all the original ideas were positive ones, in his original sketches, Jade was drawn slimmer than the others and was characterized as having an ED. This idea was thankfully removed before the dolls were produced. Also, originally, the dolls were meant to have short hair with removable, swappable wigs. I'm so glad they didn't use this idea, because if you've ever seen the color reveal Barbie dolls, you will know that those wigs look horrendous. They look like helmets with hair. The removable, swappable feet were always a feature of the dolls. Their individual personalities and styles were very important to Carter from the very beginning. You can see their little symbols on their clothes and accessories, which are still used to this day. Although at some point Jade's symbol changed from a dragon to a cat. They probably thought a dragon may be a little bit stereotypical since she was the only Asian character. Lupe, who became Yasmin, looked quite similar to her final doll. The biggest difference I can see is the removal of her hoodie. Halliday, who became Sasha, is also very similar, although I think I prefer the name Halliday. It's just a cool name. She was also originally meant to have braids, which would have been cool. Zoe, who became Chloe, didn't originally have her denim jacket, and interestingly, her hair was brown underneath her wig. Jade, who was the only doll to retain her original name, interestingly has had the most changes when it comes to her outfit, which I'm glad because I'm not a fan of this red dress. Carter says he was inspired by a Steve Madden advertisement he saw in the August 1998 issue of 17 magazine. He was also inspired by these Coca-Cola adverts and these Paris Blue Jeans adverts. After 7 months of working odd jobs in Missouri, Carter Bryant decided to return to LA and to Mattel to make some income after the Christmas of 1998. When he returned to Mattel, Carter would design for the Barbie collector line, and he designed dolls like Goddess of Beauty Barbie, Grand Entrance Barbie, and the Hollywood series, which I absolutely love. I love this series, it's very glamorous. But sadly, Carter was not enjoying the stifling creative process at Mattel. He decided not to pitch his Bratz idea to Mattel because they had historically lacked the innovative, daring spirit that Bratz really needed. Although Mattel did make some attempts to update the Barbie brand before the year 2000, like introducing the Generation Girls line, which focused on a diverse group of Barbie's friends attending an international high school in New York. I really want to make a video all about this line. Let me know if you'd watch that. But the original Generation Girls line originally featured dolls with piercings and tattoos. Unfortunately, they were eventually recalled and reintroduced without these features because of complaints. You see, Barbie had a very restrictive image that she needed to uphold. On September 1st, 2000, Carter got a meeting at a small up-and-coming toy company based in LA called MGA. Apparently, Carter took some discarded materials from Mattel, including some of Ken's boots, to create the first Bratz prototype, which does seem a little bit shady if you ask me. He also took a day off work to attend the meeting, but Carter claims to have created the Bratz completely in his own time. Carter met with CEO and founder of MGA, Isaac Larian, but unfortunately, at first, Isaac didn't like the Bratz. He thought they were ugly and weird and looked like aliens.
When Larian first saw the Bratz design in 2001, he thought they looked like aliens.
Do you still think they look like aliens? No, I think now they look beautiful.
But luckily enough for Carter, Isaac's 12-year-old daughter, Jasmine, was in the meeting and she interrupted her father and said that she thought the dolls were cool. With his daughter's blessing, Isaac decided to produce the Bratz dolls. In the deal Isaac made with Carter, Carter would get 3% royalties of every doll sold and $5,500 a month for designing services for 6 months' work on the Bratz. In 10 years, Carter's 3% royalties made him $35 million. After signing his agreement with MGA, Carter continued to work his day job at Mattel for another month, whilst meeting with Paula Garcia to work on the Bratz. MGA enlisted some help from some seamstresses that worked at Mattel too to create sample fashions for the Bratz. Years later, when the seamstresses' involvement was discovered by Mattel, they were fired. On October 19th, 2000, Carter finally quit his job at Mattel. In his exit meeting, he apparently explicitly said he wasn't leaving to work for the competition and wanted to return to his hometown for a lifestyle change. But Carter wasn't alone. In the 5 years after Bratz launched, 115 ex-Mattel employees moved to MGA. The Bratz hate train! After the Bratz were released, they were often criticised for their pouty lips, seductive eyes, and revealing clothing. In an article from 2005 called "Groups Claim Bratz Dolls Are Too Sexy," Diana Zuckerman says, "It's really shocking that 6-year-old girls are playing with these very sexualized dolls. And even girls younger than that. In my opinion, there's just a quality to the marketing. And it might inspire young girls to dress like When girls dress like this, they can become targets." A little bit of casual victim blaming there. I personally don't even think the Bratz outfits are that revealing. And Isaac Larian agrees. He countered that the morality groups are the ones that are immoral.
That Bratz doll, she's wearing, the leopard skin top, she's got the sequins, she's got the hairs. I mean, people have compared them to streetwalkers. They look a little, trashy.
They don't look trashy to me, and this is, I think, trashy is in the eyes of the adults. When we show this to the little girls, and we have done that over and over, everybody says they're beautiful. They never say they look like a streetwalker.
Critics would say, well, you're sending a message, maybe a message that it's okay to dress like this, it's okay to be, even though the young girls may not say, sexy in that way.
The doll.
Are you concerned at all about that?
This is a doll. A doll doesn't send the message. The message comes from the home, from the parents, from the schools. A doll, a plastic doll, doesn't send any messages to anybody.
There isn't really anything inherently sexual about the way the Bratz dressed. Is it possible for people to want to dress in a certain way just for themselves and because they think it looks cool? There's something inherently misogynistic about the idea that the Bratz appearance was all to entice men. In an article from 2007 called "Bratz Controversy as Serious as Sales," Sharon Lamb, co-author of the book Packaging Girlhood, says, she does appreciate the doll's ethnic diversity, but objects to the Britney Spears wardrobe and the Paris Hilton manners. Leave Britney alone! Honestly, keep Britney and Paris out of this. Haven't they suffered enough? Lamb also says, if you put the Bratz clothes on real teenagers, they'd look pretty sleazy. These articles really give you a glimpse of the cultural climate at the time and what was deemed appropriate to say. In hindsight, I think that the Bratz' rebellious attitude and modern clothes was what appealed to myself and I'm sure a lot of the preteen demographic. And actually, their passion for fashion wasn't as harmful as the criticism and the public shaming that they had to endure. I remember as a child constantly seeing the Bratz being called and by mainstream news outlets, which for a child to overhear could probably be way more damaging to their sense of self than wearing like a cute top and some eyeshadow. In any case, Bratz were immediately branded as the anti-Barbie doll line. Some of the original commercials for Bratz kind of leaned into this, even featuring not so subtle digs at Barbie.
No pink.
Your way.
¿Eres clónica? ¿O juegas diferente?
So from the very start, the two doll lines were pitted against each other. Bratz also did something which most new Barbie rival doll lines weren't brave enough to do. That is, make it so that Barbie's clothes didn't fit on a Bratz doll. But even so, Bratz were a massive success.
We're going cruising tonight.
Although Bratz sales were slow when they first launched in 2001, they started to pick up by Christmas, and by the end of 2001, MGA sold $97 million worth of Bratz dolls. By 2003, they had sold $1 billion worth of products. In 2004, Bratz outsold Barbie in the UK, and I'm sure other places. In 2005, global sales of Bratz dolls and Bratz products grossed over $2 billion. That year, they made $800 million, and Barbie made $445 million. By 2006, Bratz had acquired 40% of the fashion doll market and had sold over 100 million Bratz dolls. Bratz also sold very well with Black and Latina groups because they felt like the dolls catered to them a lot better than Barbie ever had. Mattel was quaking. Mattel retaliates. Originally, Mattel went about deploying their usual tactics of creating similar dolls to directly compete with Bratz. Enter Mycene. I have my Mycene dolls here. They are cute, don't get me wrong, but I'm definitely more of a Bratz girl. And you can definitely see why people were pointing out their similarities. The original line of Mycene dolls was released in fall of 2002, about a year after the Bratz. The dolls also had cartoony proportions and a focus on fashion and teen culture similar to the Bratz. They also consisted of a ethnically ambiguous group of friends. Similar to the Bratz, Mycene also had large removable feet, but under their plastic feet was a small Barbie foot. As you can see, there's like a Barbie foot underneath. You see, the Mycene dolls still used the Barbie body mold, which meant, unlike Bratz, the Mycene dolls could fit into Barbie's clothes and shoes, so there was a little bit of cross-pollination there. The original Bratz dolls came with an extra fashion, so the Mycene dolls came with an extra fashion. Originally, the Mycene group consisted of 3 dolls, including Barbie, they couldn't let her go, Madison, and Chelsea. But soon after, Mattel added Noli, making it a group of 4, which again was very similar to the Bratz. They did end up adding more characters later though, but the core 4 was still there. Similar to the Bratz, the Mycene characters had distinct personalities. They also released a whole line of boys dolls, similar to Bratz, instead of just one boyfriend character like Ken, which had been kind of the standard for doll lines before. Interestingly, Bratz cost about $20 to $25, whereas Mycene usually cost $15 to $20. So Mattel was probably trying to undercut Bratz. Mattel would try again to compete with Bratz in 2003 when they released Flavors, a line of dolls which wore MTV-inspired streetwear, but this line was quickly discontinued shortly after it arrived. Most people, myself included, saw these dolls as kind of pandering. They were called unimaginative stereotypes by the Chicago Tribune. Mattel also tried revamping Barbie's image to keep up with the Bratz. In 2004, she started wearing clothes that were very similar to the Bratz, in lines like Fashion Fever, Fashion Show, and the American Idol Barbie. They suddenly stopped focusing so heavily on Barbie's career and started focusing a lot more on Barbie partying with her friends. Good for her. In the Cali Girls line of dolls, Barbie even broke up with Ken. I think because they wanted her to come across a little bit more edgy. But Mycene was definitely the closest Mattel ever got to rivaling the Bratz. The Bratz slogan was "The girls with a passion for fashion," but after My Scene was released, they changed their slogan to "The only girls with a passion for fashion," to draw attention to the fact that the Bratz could not be replicated. Interestingly, the two rival doll brands would start to release very, very similar lines of dolls. Bratz Wintertime Wonderland were released in 2003, and My Scene Chill Out was also released in 2003. Bratz Sun-Kissed Summer was released in 2004, and My Scene Jammin' in Jamaica was also released in 2004. Bratz released their first animated movie on VHS in 2004, and My Scene also released a VHS in 2004. Bratz Pets were released in 2004, and My Scene Pets were also released in 2004. Bratz Head Games was released in 2005, and My Scene Swap in Style was also released in 2005. Bratz Forever Diamonds were released in 2006. These dolls came with real diamonds. And My Scene My Bling Bling was re-released with real diamonds this time, also in 2006. Bratz Sweet Dreams Pajama Party were released in 2006, and My Scene PJ Party was released 2 years later. Bratz Genie Magic was released in 2006, and My Scene Golden Bling was released 2 years later. They just kept releasing basically the same thing. Isaac Larian. Isaac Larian is a very interesting character, to say the least. In the Bratz vs Barbie debate, he can sometimes appear to be the innocent underdog, but Isaac has had his fair share of controversies, which often center around his pretty unprofessional, outrageous tweets and posts on LinkedIn. Also, apparently Isaac's brother Farhad had originally owned 45% of MGA with his brother, but Isaac had convinced his brother to sell his percentage of the company to him right before the release of the Bratz, by hiding the Bratz plans from his brother and convincing him that the business was failing. Farhad took his brother to court when he found out, and eventually they settled out of court. Mattel would bring up the court case between Isaac and his brother later in an attempt to prove that Isaac was a shady character, but Isaac was determined to make Bratz a success, and even remortgaged his house to invest in marketing and producing the dolls. Mattel's CEO at the time was a man called Bob Eckert. He had previously been the CEO of Kraft Foods for 23 years and knew little about fashion or fashion dolls. Robert Eckert started at Mattel in 2000 and was focused on cost cutting, and apparently fired about 15% of Mattel's employees when he started at the company. Isaac Larian once said about him, "Mattel's boss comes from the cheese industry. They do not see that selling cheese and toys are very different." After Bratz had become a massive success, they won the People's Choice Award for Toy of the Year. Isaac Larian was apparently getting increasingly more frustrated that all the industry awards were going to Barbie, but hey, at least Bratz won the People's Choice Award, which I think really shows that the market was yearning for something new and innovative. Meanwhile, to the press, Isaac Larian said that he had come up with the idea for Bratz. He gave a couple different explanations for where the idea had come from, including focus groups or his daughter Jasmine. But were these explanations true? Bratz being petty queens. Isaac Larian was a lot more rebellious and shady than other CEOs, and would often call out Barbie for being old and tired in interviews.
What's wrong with Barbie?
It's time for her to retire. She's been around for too long.
And you want to help Barbie retire?
Yes, I will help her retire. I will throw a party for her.
He's welcome to throw a party for Barbie anytime he wants, but it won't be a retirement party. She has been and will remain the #1 fashion doll in the industry.
Robert Eckert, the CEO of Mattel, would take a more measured approach and would say in interviews Barbie was unfazed by competition from other dolls. Bratz would eventually get a series of direct-to-DVD movies and a TV series. Even though it was never officially confirmed, lots of people believe that MGA is throwing shade at Barbie with the character of Bardeen Maxwell and her pink-obsessed sidekicks, the Tweevils. In the Bratz TV show, Bardeen Maxwell is the head of Your Thing magazine. Your Thing sounds a lot like My Scene. Bardeen is also a Trump supporter.
Well, Ma, is that Donald Trump? Where?
In the show, they call her old and out of touch a lot.
Cool. I'm 25. How old are you?
31. Whoops. Let's see. 25.
But it turns out she's actually only 31, which I don't think is that old. I'm 31. Bardeen is characterized as being mean, self-absorbed, narrow-minded, out of date, and obsessed with the color pink. Remind you of anyone? Bardeen kind of looks like she's wearing Barbie's Day to Night outfit from 1985. Bratz also seemed to poke fun at the parents that shamed and criticized them with Sheridan's parents in the Bratz Forever Diamonds movie.
Oh, heavens to Betsy, what is the meaning of this?
But Dad. Sheridan? But Mom.
But nothing, young lady. You go to your room.
The My Scene line, on the other hand, had a boy character called Bryant. He might have been named after Carter Bryant before Mattel realized that he was involved with the Bratz. Interestingly, in 2003, after Mattel discovered Carter Bryant's involvement in the Bratz line, Bryant, the My Scene character, disappeared. It was mentioned that he moved to London. Bratz versus Barbie gets serious. Eventually, in August 2002, Mattel got just the ammunition they needed in the form of an anonymous letter tipping them off to the truth. Bratz had been created not by Isaac Larian, but by Carter Bryant, who had gone to MGA with the idea for Bratz after coming up with it while employed by Mattel. Apparently, Mattel had got more evidence in 2003 from lawyers in Hong Kong which represented a Taiwanese toy manufacturer which had previously been sued by MGA for infringing on their Bratz intellectual property. After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Mattel's thinking that MGA stole Bratz is a fantasy. It's delusion that they have. They know, and we know, that they don't own Bratz.
What would it mean for MGA if they did win?
It's impossible for them to win. It's the same thing that if I say, what if I could go and live on Mars tomorrow? I can't.
In April 2004, Mattel filed a lawsuit against MGA in California federal court, claiming ownership of the Bratz intellectual property. The lengthy court case would then begin. One of the lawyers apparently said after the fact, it got ugly. MGA and Carter had to find ways to prove that Carter came up with the idea for Bratz while on a break from working at Mattel, while he was living with his family in Missouri between May 1998 and January 1999. Carter would mention in court that he was inspired by a Steve Madden advertisement he saw in the August of 1998 issue of 17 magazine. This was obviously trying to prove the timeline, but mentioning the Steve Madden advert would backfire, as the designer for the Steve Madden ad would also launch a copyright infringement lawsuit against Carter as well as MGA and Mattel, not knowing at the time which company would claim the ownership of Bratz. The judgment in that court case stated that the designer cannot monopolize the abstract concept of absurdly large-headed, long-limbed, attractive, fashionable women. Carter also mentioned being inspired by those teenagers that came out of the high school in his hometown, again trying to prove the timeline. Mattel executives claimed in court that teenagers at a Midwestern high school, like the one Carter claims to be inspired by, could never possibly have dressed as cool and trendy as the Bratz. They tried to use this as evidence that Carter Bryant must have come up with the idea while in LA. The principal of Kickapoo High School flew to California to testify that her teenagers were in tune with the latest fashion trends. She even added that Brad Pitt went to their high school. Richard, Carter Bryant's partner, was included in the case a lot because Carter had shown him pictures he had sketched of the Bratz on New Year's Eve before he had returned to work at Mattel. In the courtroom, Mattel and MGA both referred to Richard as Carter's roommate instead of his partner. Even Carter Bryant's mother, Jane, testified that Carter was living with her in Missouri when he came up with the idea for Bratz. One of MGA's attorneys told the jury, "Mothers don't lie." Unfortunately, Carter didn't date any of his Bratz sketches. Mattel hired forensics experts to convince the jury that the fibers in the paper Carter Bryant used for his Bratz designs matched the paper in his notebook he used while he was working at Mattel. This is going a bit far. Mattel also apparently tried to convince the jury that Carter had stolen the idea from another Mattel designer called Lily Martinez. She had apparently designed a similar idea called Toon Teens, but Mattel hadn't registered the copyright and the idea was scrapped. Of course, when Mattel wanted to use the idea as ammunition, they then registered the copyright for Martinez's sketches. By this point, apparently Carter didn't want anything to do with Mattel or MGA, so he handed over the remains of his fortune to Mattel and settled his part of the lawsuit with them before the trial even finished. But unfortunately, he was still a central witness in this case. MGA argued that Mattel was using the lawsuit over the Bratz intellectual property as a weapon to weaken MGA financially and slow down the growth of their success. These claims by MGA seem to get overshadowed by the broader intellectual property case. Barbie wins, for now.
A federal judge has ordered MGA Entertainment to stop producing its popular Bratz dolls, very popular with kids. The ruling also stipulates the company can no longer sell the dolls after the holidays. In fact, the judge ordered MGA to recall all Bratz dolls from retailers and to destroy the molds used to make the dolls. This decision was based on finding that the doll's designer came up with the concept while working for rival Mattel, which of course produces the iconic Barbie doll.
In 2008, a jury rules in favor of Mattel. The jury ordered MGA to pay $100 million in damages and grants Mattel control over the Bratz brand. Mattel originally sued for $500 million, but MGA didn't have to pay that much. MGA were very unlucky in the first case because the judge wouldn't allow them to mention Mattel's financial struggles or Mattel's history with suing the competition. They weren't even allowed to mention the name Barbie in court. The judge's reasoning was that this was a case about the Bratz intellectual property, so Barbie shouldn't be mentioned. Mattel had apparently been spying on Isaac Larian, his wife, and family, but this wasn't brought up in the first court case. There was apparently also some racial bias against Isaac Larian at play in the first trial, as well as some homophobia against Carter Bryant. The book goes into a lot more detail, but I'm not going to go into it in this video. MGA were ordered to immediately stop manufacturing Bratz. That sadly meant that many Bratz lines scheduled for a 2009 release were scrapped. Some of them included Bratz Costume Party 4th edition, Bratz Best Friends, Bratz Hobbies, Bratz Fashion Capitals, Bratz Desert Jewels Talking Genies, Bratz Twins Sleepover, Bratz Magic Hair 3rd edition, Bratz Sports, Bratz Hotspots Playsets, Bratz Rock Princess, and Bratz Party. Some of these designs were recycled and used for Moxie Girls. Moxie Girls were the dolls MGA released to replace the Bratz. The Bratz Kids dolls had a name change as well to Forever Kids, which I think was because MGA couldn't use the Bratz name anymore. MGA were told by the court that they were allowed to wait until after the holiday season was over to pull any remaining Bratz from the shelves. Luckily for MGA, the Bratz doll recall would never actually happen because it was halted just in time. Meanwhile, Mattel had started work on their own version of the Bratz. Bratz by Mattel. In 2010, some sample head molds started appearing on eBay sold from China. These head molds were for an unreleased doll line, but it was unclear exactly which doll line. Later, it was revealed that they were the Mattel version of the Bratz dolls, which had started development when Mattel won the Bratz intellectual property. They were designed by Jamie Deander, and in around 2022, stock images of the completed dolls were found on their portfolio. It seems that there were going to be 4 different lines. Let's Hang Out, which appears to be the basic line, Team Shopping, which was a 2-pack, Poolside, and Electric Outfits. Because Mattel only had the rights to Carter Bryant's original designs, they couldn't use the names Yasmin, Chloe, and Sasha because they only came later in development, but they could use the name Jade. The other characters were renamed Isabel, Logan, and Nia. It appears that Jade's name was also changed at some point to Melody. What do I think of these dolls, I hear you ask? Hideous. The outfits are an absolute mess. I think these dolls really prove that Mattel never would have been able to pull off a cool and current doll line like the Bratz. But I don't think Mattel was ever really interested in making a Bratz doll line. They just wanted to destroy Barbie's competition. Luckily for some, the Mattel Bratz were never released because Bratz fight back. In 2009, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the jury's decision, ruling that the trial was flawed and ordered a new trial. On top of that, in 2010, MGA files a countersuit accusing Mattel of corporate espionage, alleging that Mattel had employees pose as toy buyers at trade shows like Toy Fair. The undercover employees would gain access to MGA's private showrooms and steal trade secrets like ideas for upcoming products. This might have explained why Bratz and Mycene released such similar lines for so many years. MGA also countersued Mattel, alleging unfair competition and anti-competitive practices, claiming Mattel was trying to eliminate the competition. MGA claimed that Mattel used its dominant market position and influence over retailers to persuade them to reduce shelf space for MGA's Bratz in favour of Mattel's Barbie. For example, in 2004, a retailer called Kohl's was selling over $5 million worth of Bratz products, but in 2005, abruptly stopped selling Bratz dolls. Apparently, Mattel had paid Kohl's $1.25 million to buy the shelf space back. Isaac Larian had even more claims, but not all of them were backed by evidence. Some of them include, apparently it was also revealed that Mattel had persuaded the Toy Industry Association to change the process for how they give awards so that Mattel would win more awards than MGA. Mattel had apparently also strong-armed market research firms into manipulating sales data so that it appeared that MGA was selling fewer fashion dolls. Larian also believed that Mattel had purposefully brought up all the supplies of Saran doll hair from 2 main hair supply companies to block MGA and, I guess, make the Bratz bald. Throughout both trials, Isaac Larian and his family had appeared in court every day, whereas Bob Eckert, the CEO of Mattel, was mostly absent. But in the second trial, the judge said Eckert had to appear in court every day, and Eckert was apparently clearly very angry and disdainful about this. In the second trial, Carter took the stand once again, but this time he appeared to be beaten down by the whole ordeal, and it seemed like the jury felt sorry for him. The new judge on the appeal was much more fair and said in a statement, "America thrives on competition. Barbie, the all-American girl, will too." In March of 2011, a jury finds in favour of MGA regarding the corporate espionage claims and rewards MGA $88.5 million in damages. This amount is later increased totaling around 310 million. In a separate ruling in July of 2011, MGA got the news that they had been waiting for. The jury finds that Bratz does not infringe on Mattel's copyright, allowing MGA to retain ownership of the Bratz brand. Apparently, in 2013, Mattel and MGA reached a settlement, effectively ending their lengthy legal battles. The terms of the settlement remain confidential, but the most important thing was MGA retained the rights to the Bratz dolls. The battle continues outside of court.
Bratz are back. I like how you brats like that.
After the court battle, MGA returned to releasing Bratz dolls and they celebrated their 10th anniversary. But unfortunately, Bratz never quite managed to return to their former glory. Mattel, on the other hand, managed to create their own edgy doll line without needing the Bratz intellectual property. Enter Monster High.
Monster High. Teen children of legendary monsters.
Monster High is a doll line focusing on the fashionable teenage sons and daughters of classic movie monsters like Dracula, Frankenstein, and The Mummy. This time it was MGA's turn to seemingly copy Mattel by creating their own gothic Bratz spin-off line called Bratzillas.
Cousins of the Bratz.
In April 2015, Isaac Larian apparently approached Mattel with an offer to try and buy them and merge with them, but they said no. He continued trying to do this for a couple years, but it appears he has given up now. On International Friendship Day in 2021, the official Bratz Instagram account posted a picture with Barbie seemingly trying to squash the beef. Barbie didn't respond. But Isaac Larian still seems to have some hatred towards Mattel. He has posted many times about Mattel saying things like, they're an evil empire up to their old tricks, and calling their products knockoffs. In recent years, lines like Barbie Extra have appeared to copy MGA's LOL Surprise OMG, and lines like MGA's Shadow High have appeared to copy Mattel's Monster High. Interestingly, the Barbie movie seemed to reference the Bratz in a scene where Barbie is talking to Sasha and her friends. Sasha's friends seem to resemble the Bratz, and Sasha even shares a name with one of the Bratz. Mattel recently released a line of dolls called Barbie Dream Bestie, and many fans were quick to notice how similar the Dream Besties were to MGA's Bratz. I made a whole video about that here. Mattel is also planning the return of My Scene next year, which could reignite the rivalry between Bratz and My Scene. In conclusion, the Bratz versus Barbie rivalry was one of the biggest the toy industry has ever seen. It kind of surpassed even the toy industry, becoming a way for people to identify themselves. Are you more Bratz or are you more Barbie? Let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching, doll fans. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel if you're new here. Also, don't forget to check me out on Instagram and TikTok. And please consider supporting me on Patreon. And I will see you real soon, doll fans. Bye. Thank you so much to Siren Kelly, Sunny, Bobby and Cheryl, Imani, Tracy, Jico, Patty Heiss, Anna, Jordan, Cynthia, Raina Ray, Petra, Desi, Michael, @dolls_on-the-go, Jasper, Latarian Donnell, Lily and Lish, Michael and Russ. And thank you to all my other Patreon supporters. Your support means everything.